This is Spirit with Love. Thank you for being here. Before getting started, please note that the views and opinions expressed by our guest speakers do not necessarily reflect those of Daniel Martinez Stahl, True Life Quest, and any other related entities. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only and does not constitute professional advice of any kind, have it be legal, medical, or otherwise. We hope that you enjoy the show and may it help you to deepen, explore, and expand with love. Hello and welcome to Spirit with Love. My name is Daniel Martinez Stahl. I am the host and creator of this platform. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here with Ana Maria Vasquez, one of the people that I blame for my spirit journey in the last few years, and a good friend of mine that I am very deeply honored to be a part of our respective journeys. So what are we here to talk about? Well, first and foremost, I'd like to begin with an opening intention that I'm going to be using as a framework for the entire platform. Given that this is the very first podcast episode, there's a few things that I'm going to do a little bit differently in this episode than in the subsequent conversations. So before we begin, as we get started on this journey, I'd like to invite you to take a deep, conscious breath and simply become aware of yourself. Allow your body and mind to settle down and relax, making it even easier for your awareness to deepen and expand as we explore what it means to be both spirit and human together. We invite our beautiful intellect to listen for things it doesn't already know, to notice information that is new for us at this point in time, that we are ready for, and that will help us to expand even more easily beyond the edges of our understanding. To our spirit guides, mentors, masters, and angels, our friends and loved ones, we thank you for always being with us and for your loving guidance and support, for playing with us on this incredible adventure as we all grow and expand together. To the master healers and beings of light, we thank you for helping us to create and maintain a sacred space where we can all feel safe to go beyond and into the new. To the love and light of the divine, we thank you for bringing us together and for allowing us to sing our soul song one more day in one more way. And with that, we are ready to begin. And so before I ask Ana Maria to introduce herself, I'd like to introduce you to Spirit with Love. Spirit with Love is a multi-layered and multi-dimensional platform that is fundamentally a podcast, free masterclasses, paid-for courses, and eventually will also include virtual summits and webinar series, and whatever else unknown is around the corner. And giving credit where credit is due, this podcast is inspired by the amazing work of Alex Ferrari and Next Level Soul. So thank you, Alex, for everything that you do. Anyway, that's all I'm going to share for now. And I will let Ana Maria introduce herself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, first of all, thank you for that beautiful opening, right? Like that time to take to just get here now when we are all being pulled in so many different directions, moment by moment, and to have a place to consciously be here now. It's huge. And the way that we invited our thinking mind to keep busy while we're doing all of this exploring, it's so profound. And that really is at the crux of what I do. I'm a multisensory animal and nature intuitive, and I help people understand the messages that are coming from the animals in nature while unpacking their intuitive backpack, because it's great that I can talk to animals and trees and rocks, but it's more important, right, that the other humans remember that they can do it too. This is inherent in our wiring, and we've just forgotten how to do it. And each of us will do it differently. And not everybody's going to want to go on and use those channels in the way that I do, but to remember that connection, everything that I do, everything that I share, my daily prayer is to help the humans remember that we are all connected. And I get so excited when more and more scientific articles come out proclaiming this amazing either sentience in the natural world and or the connection between the humans and the other animals, which even seems silly, differentiating us, because we are animals, right? Biologically we are an animal, and because we learned how to move out of the forest and build these synthetic structures, we're kind of forgetful creatures that way.
And so another aspect of Spirit with Love, again, the foundation of what it is that we're going to be doing here is exploring who we are as both spirit and human. And so we're going to be talking about these subjects and these topics. And what Ana Maria is introducing here, there's a number of different areas and directions that we can go in this conversation. But I want to emphasize something that she highlighted, which is in my opening intention. It's the utilization of our intellect and the misunderstood aspect of our intellect. Because there's a lot of people that, especially in a spiritual journey, will talk about how you need to get out of your head and into your heart. And I'm not saying that's not true, but it's not about belittling the head in order to get into the heart. It's about finding a synergy. It's about finding a relationship where one supports the other and one creates openings for the other. And so for those of you that know me, this isn't going to be anything new. I use my intellect quite a lot. In fact, I've had spirit tell me that I cannot ignore my intellect, and I have to use my intellect as part of the way that I connect with my heart. And so we're all very unique and different in the way that we utilize this beautiful human of ours, and the way that we interact with our beautiful human is very different for each one of us. The heart connection, which is the chakra, the center of our body, is the bridge between our physical energy, which is the lower chakras, and our spiritual energy, which is the higher chakras. So the heart is that bridge between earth and sky. And so the importance of the heart is paramount. Just the other day, I read somewhere or heard somebody talking about how appreciation and love are the same frequency.
Mhm.
And for me, for someone who really struggled with, how do you get into your heart? What the hell is love? What do I do? Where do I go? How do I do it? This idea of appreciation and love are the same frequency. It was so easy for me to recognize that. I don't need to understand love. I don't need to know how to connect to my heart. The one really easy thing that I can do is I can be conscious of appreciating things. I appreciate the beauty of a flower that I see. I appreciate the beauty of a sky, a sunset, or a cloudy day. I love cloudy days. I love rain. Unlike many people that are like, oh, it's such a horrible day. I'm like, no, it's not. Anyway, that aside, I'm a big fan of not belittling aspects of ourselves. So I don't want to become a spiritual being by belittling my human experience. And I don't want to be in my heart by belittling my beautiful mind and my intellect. It's all about an integration of every part of us with grace and appreciation. Now, we all have our preferences. So there's things that I'm going to prefer to do because my preferences lead me in that direction, which are going to be different than Ana Maria's. But that doesn't make my preferences any better or any worse than hers. And it doesn't make my way of doing things any better or any worse than hers.
It really comes down to resonance, right? As we move through the world, what do we resonate with? And this is where, right, like someone who comes from an intellectual side is going to be able to phrase and explain things differently and in a different way, and speak into the listening of people differently than somebody else who doesn't necessarily come from the intellectual side. Again, it's not a good, a bad, or anything like that, but it's what do you resonate with? And that's how that becomes our inner guidance system, and we follow that. And for me, it's animals in nature. That's my portal. That's what I use to jump into the heart space, into the other realms. But for some people, it's other things, and it's all good because it's what lights each of us up, and that's what we're being asked to say yes to.
A lot of people will talk about their purpose and their direction, their meaning in life. Why are we here? I've lost my way. How do I find it? And it's exactly what Ana Maria just said. Follow your joy, and you will find your way because your joy is your way. The things that you are inspired to pursue, the things that you are inspired to learn about, the things that you are inspired to explore, those are the breadcrumbs that lead you into, I don't want to say your highest potential, because that's not actually accurate. They lead you back into your most probable future and your most probable self, because we have infinite possibilities. Who we are. I'm laughing because I've been saying this a lot, and so this isn't going to be new for some of you. Who we are is spirit and human, right? And this is fundamentally what awakens us to something greater than our simply human experience. And I don't say that disparagingly. When we don't know and we don't realize, when we have forgotten that we are spirit and human, we live a certain kind of life. And again, it's not better or worse, it's just different. Every single one of us as souls have chosen to come into this beautiful planet to have an incredible experience, and every experience has gifts with it, even if those gifts are hidden underneath trauma and tragedy and horrific lifestyles. As humans, we perceive things as good and bad. And that's on purpose because our humans are designed to interact with life in a certain way. From a spiritual perspective, every experience is an experience, and every experience provides a framework that allows us as individuals to expand into something beyond what we already are, beyond who we already are, or we perceive ourselves to be. And I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. So I talk about how when we awaken to a spiritual journey is the moment that we realize that we are spirit first and human second. And every single moment after that is a journey of discovering that we are human first and spirit second. Because as long as we are here on earth playing in this meat suit, as a friend of mine calls it, as long as we are here playing in this form, we are this form for a specific reason. And so the more that we realize that our human can have a spiritual experience, the higher we will actually ascend into our spiritual journey. And so awakening is the process of remembering that you're spirit. And then from there, it's about expanding into even greater experiences as human. And so again, interrelationship, integration. You are not human first and spirit second. You are not spirit first and human second. You are both human and spirit. They are not separate from each other. They are one. They are inseparable and they are indistinguishable. And so anyway.
Well, and that's the truth, right? Like it's not, and so many people on their path want to get up and out of the body. And the truth is, yeah, those are great, wonderful, fun experiences. But the true program here that we're working to remember is to embody fully in our physicalness, in this density, right? It's dense here for a reason, and to embody fully, and through that, activating those higher experiences where you actually end up going through the human process, but everything becomes much more magical, right? If I go too long in a day without something magical happening, I know I am, I'm off balance. I am not in my center. I'm not in my true alignment. I'm believing in the separation, right? Whether it's of myself or between me and others.
You mentioned this idea of leaving the body. I talk about how I love the tree metaphor for many different reasons. And one of the ways in which I use the tree metaphor is that a tree can only grow as tall as its roots allow. And so if you grow too much in a spiritual direction, metaphorically speaking, you're going to hit a ceiling because the roots can't support any additional growth. And the roots is your humanity. The roots is your human experience. The roots is Mother Earth. Mother Earth is our physical experience. Now, one of the things that I talk about in the spirit journeys that I help facilitate is that you're experiencing this incredible journey outside of your body through your beautiful human. We forget that when we have an astral projection or we have an astral travel, what's traveling is our human awareness. And so we are taking our human on an astral travel. We're just separating our human awareness from our human physical body. And so this is part of one of the things that I like to talk about is this integration and this wholeness that exists between us. Because as soon as we start disparaging one aspect of ourselves, we start getting into a metaphorical war with ourselves and a conflict within ourselves. And we innocently create glass ceilings because of that inner conflict, because we're judging an aspect of ourselves as being bad or not worthy or disrespectfully.
Yeah, so often we mistake that the name of the game is to kill off those parts, right? Kill off the ego. And right, like even just saying that, it within me, I'm horrified,
Or
right? Because
control.
yeah,
I need to
it's not
control
about
this.
that. It's about loving on those aspects so much, right? That the love brings them back into wholeness. You're reintegrating all of those parts that erroneously believe they are separate, right? No matter what our opinions about those parts are. And those parts, those aspects know us so intimately. And they are doing what they think is best to keep us safe. Even though I was looking at that, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. But at some point, it did. That behavior, that action, that belief, it saved us in their eyes somehow. And the value, right? Again, of coming back into remembering that everything here is about unity, and all there is love, right? There isn't anything else. It's fear, it's illusion. But to come back to that within us, no wonder the world around us, right? Everything is reflecting back. No wonder the world around us looks so crazy when we look at that fight, that struggle that's going on, even within folks that have been practicing on the path for a long time. When we stay in that error of belief that we're trying to kill something off or we want to get rid of something, it does seem counterintuitive, because it's like, oh, well, if that aspect is what's causing me to do this, well, then let me get rid of it, right? Let me cut that off. And it does become comedic as you go on, right? Every spiritual master that I've known has had a phenomenal sense of humor, and mostly about themselves and about our humanness, right? Like, I like to call it out in my everyday life. Oh, my human thinks this, or my human is thinking this at this point, or my human has this to say about it. And I like to say it that way because then I remember I have a choice, right? That's just input. That's just feedback. Whatever my human is thinking or saying or physically doing at the moment, that's just feedback. And then I get to make a choice. And what is going to move me towards love? What's going to move me towards separation? To me, is always the easiest litmus test to use.
Our human, our beautiful human. I talk about, or I explore and play with the idea of our soul has a personality and an ego in the description of things. Ego being a perception of self. Your self-identity is your ego. Our soul, our higher self, has a perception of self, has an identity of self. Therefore, our soul and our higher self have what many people refer to as an ego. And our human has a perception of self as well. And so if we're looking at controlling our ego by belittling our human experience, we're being hypocritical in the sense that we're not recognizing that our soul and our higher self also have an ego. And we're saying that that ego is fine, but the other ego isn't. And so I don't like to use the word ego. You know, I tend to, similar to Ana Maria, I refer to it as my human experience. So I started noticing that what people are referring to as ego tends to be what my human is responding to and how my human is responding to. And of course, as we shift our awareness of who we are in this life, how we respond to life and how we interact and engage with life changes. Not because we're changing it, but because that understanding shifts the way that we see things and interpret things and interact with things. We all have universal aspects of ourselves, like the blueprint of what it is to be human, and we can't escape that. And the more that we understand the universal nature of what makes us and how we work, the easier it is for us to recognize the innocence of the choices that we make and the choices that other people make. And so the more that I have learned to understand how my mind works, how my human works, how my spirit works, the more I get to see the innocence behind the experience that I'm having. And so some of you are wondering, what is this conversation about? What are we listening to? Ana Maria is an animal communicator. Daniel, amongst many things, and that isn't just what Ana Maria does, and Daniel also, amongst many things, helps to facilitate spiritual journeys and is a channel, as well as Ana Maria is a channel. But what are we talking about? We're talking about what it means to be human and spirit, fundamentally. And so Ana Maria was someone that I came into along with Shannon Johnson. We were introduced together because we were taking a past life regression class. And in our conversations, I got to see who Ana Maria was and the work that she did. And same thing with Shannon Johnson, who's another incredible channel, amongst other things. And I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to play with spirit in that way. And a friend of mine asks me, why am I interested in channeling? And my answer to him is that learning to channel is a beautiful journey of learning who I am. Remembering that I am a natural channel is a process and a journey of releasing and letting go of the idea of lack and limitation and towards an aspect of integration and connection. I am never disconnected from my higher self. I'm never disconnected from source energy. I'm never disconnected from my spirit intelligence. I'm never disconnected from my guides and angels, from my loved ones that have transitioned or haven't transitioned. I'm never disconnected from anything. And when I remember that I am connected to everything, it makes it easier for me to channel. It makes it easier for me to recognize that that channel is always there. It's not that I'm learning to channel. It's that I'm learning to remember that I am always channeling. And again, how this manifests and represents itself is different for each of us.
And that's exactly how I explain when I'm teaching animal communication, right? I'm really, first of all, the first thing I say is speaking, communicating with that dialogue, that back and forth dialogue with the animals actually becomes just the icing on the cake, which for any of us who are animal lovers are like, what do you mean? Like, that's the holy grail. We want to talk to those little buggers, right? But what I have found is exactly what you said, but right, this is just another path to the same thing, that the way that I teach how to make that connection at the end, yes, you're going to be able to talk to animals. You'll be able to talk to trees. You'll be able to talk to rocks, whatever. Animals are the easiest subject to work with, where we can get feedback, immediate feedback, so that we know, are we tuning in? Are we not? What are we getting? But the truth is, the process of learning to do that is really about learning the mechanics of energy. How does the universe move energy? How does it respond to energy? And as you learn those mechanics, pretty soon you remember, oh, the more that I remember about the natural flow of energy, the more I remember I'm always connected. There is no disconnect. And those are just wounded aspects. And the more that we learn those mechanics, the easier moving through this human experience becomes. And it's, again, not about belittling one experience over another, but to have a deeper, richer, more purposeful experience. And then it is funny where the animal communication just becomes, oh, that's a really nice side effect, right? Of all of those other pieces. And it goes back to what lights you up, right? Some people want to channel, some people want to talk to angels, some want to lead people on guides into past lives. So again, it's following what it is that lights you up. Where do you feel yourself leaning in on something? But all paths, right? They all lead to the unity consciousness concept.
Let me ask you, speaking about animals, so we're all on our own unique journey, and the timing of things may not always be to our liking. I cannot tell you how excited I am to one day have a conversation with my plant, an active, conscious conversation. Now, friends of mine will say, I'm already communicating with my plant, my violet, which you can see in the background. I've started putting her on the forefront. I used to keep her next to me, but I've decided to move her so that she's actually in screen. I intuitively get information of when to water her. And I intuitively have some felt sense of a connection with her. But I don't have a conversation with her. And friends of mine are like, oh, well, why would you need a conversation? Because you're already connected to her. Well, I want the conversation because I want my human to have the experience. And again, I'm separating it on purpose. For me, the intuitive hits of information is what I refer to as my spiritual connection, where I have a felt sense or a knowing of something. But that knowing isn't experienced through my human senses. It's experienced through something else. And I want my human senses to be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. I totally get it, right? I totally get it. And let me tell you that every interaction that I have with a plant, it's not always like this, the easy flow back and forth, right? It comes down to the best way that my human can describe it is the personality, right? Like your violet plant, she's amazing, but she's got like a stoic energy to her. And so it actually doesn't surprise me, right? That you kind of get just the facts. I learned with the trees, they were one of my first teachers, the vastness, and again, personality is the only word that I have in my language to describe that. But I had some trees that really didn't even want to say two words to me, and other trees that would like joke and be silly and funny. And I was like, I'm trying to be spiritual and serious here, right? So it's very interesting. And again, the timing, right? Like, well, right when the tree started talking to me, the first thing I said to the talking tree was, I don't want to sound, ungrateful, but I asked to talk to animals, right? So in my human head, I was like, wait a second, why is this tree talking to me? I want to talk to an animal. So it's ridiculously humorous, our human experience and our human interpretation of things. Again, not good, bad, indifferent, it just is. And the more that we can be that observer, right, the less attached we are to different things, and it unfolds exactly how it's supposed to, regardless of what we think about it and regardless of our timing. And that timing thing in this 3D time period that we're in, it's difficult. It is so difficult because really time is a made up concept, but it's the best thing that we have to hold this container of this experience. So it really starts taking us down different rabbit holes. Hmm.
The reason that I bring up time is because I know for myself how challenging it is for me to not be where I want to be. And for me to feel the idea or have the perception that I can't do what I'm working so hard to learn how to do. And ironically, as we are told by Spirit all the time, that judgment of our journey is what innocently can create a lot of pushback.
Yes. Yes. And it
Innocently.
rarely looks like how we think it's going to look, right? Like even I'm prolific in my abilities to connect with the natural world, be it animals or trees or rocks. And yet, even for myself, it doesn't always look like how I think it should look. And I've had other people during sessions say at the end, like, oh my God, I'm completely blown away. And that was not at all what I expected. Right. But how do you explain these kinds of things or put it in a form that would satisfy our human mind? And so it is to, I call it the cosmic scavenger hunt. We lean in, we know what to do to lean in as far as we know. We get the next clue and we that takes us to the next one and so on and so forth. But in my experience, yes, there are people who have those spontaneous experiences where all of the sudden, right, they're able to channel or talk to a tree or talk to a rock or an animal or a disembodied spirit, whatever. um but the path more often is exactly what we've been talking about here, this one step after the other, awareness, a new awareness coming in, and then moving from realization into actualization, right? Like realizing I have a potential to actualizing and doing it. It's two different things. And that's the part where our human has some real opinions about how long it's taking us.
That's a nice way of putting it. I mean, we've all heard the idea, the cliche of it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? Gosh, that idea is so unhelpful until we see the truth behind it, even just a glimmer of it. And for me, it came from a conversation with the council channeled by Sarah Landon, who, for those of you that know me, I'm a big fan of her work and I'm a part of her community. They were talking about a metaphor and they were saying, imagine yourself spending all of this time, energy, effort, awareness into manifesting a beautiful home. And now imagine yourself that the home has become reality. And you walk through the front door. And what's the first thing that you do? You start to think back of all of the little things that had to happen exactly as they needed to happen that led it to the possibility for you to actually open the door and walk into that home. And as soon as they said that, I felt these chills go through my body and I went, oh my God, that is so true. How many times have I looked back and I said, for me to go to Singapore, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And the timing of that had to be so specific because I could see how one led to the other and one was connected to the other. And what I realized was I want to be more conscious of those divine moments while I'm going through them as opposed to remembering them afterwards. And that for me was such a big moment of, oh, it's about the journey. It's not about the destination.
Now I get it.
Now I get it. And I talk about how every journey is a different experience, and every journey will give you a different perspective. And so if one is hiking up a mountain, you're going to have a very different experience than if somebody takes a helicopter ride. You're both going to get to the top of the mountain, yes, but you're going to have very different experiences along the way that will give you a different aspect and a different perspective. Even if you, for argument's sake, decided that you learned how to teleport where there was no moment and it was just instantaneous for you to go from where you are to the top of the mountain, It's not about the journey of getting from where you are to the top of the mountain. It was about the journey of learning how to teleport in the first place. And so regardless of what journey we are on, look around, because if you're on the helicopter ride, you're going to have a very different perspective than if you're walking and hiking up the trails. So look around while you are there. And as much as we can, with patience and compassion, give yourself a break. Allow yourself to be where you are, even if you are frustrated and impatient. Because that, again, is another beautiful experience. Our frustration, our impatience, our resistance, our pushbacks are all part of that journey, are all part of what we are doing and learning about how to expand. You know, I talk about how one of the things that I feel is true for my own journey in my slow progress, in my very slow development, is that by doing this, I have a very, let me back up a little bit. The slower I go, the more details I'm able to speak about. The slower I go, the more reflection I have played with, which means that I've explored more options. I've played with more ideas. I've challenged things that repeatedly don't work. But in those challenges, what I'm doing is I'm developing a stronger foundation for what is to come, because I don't know what's to come. And so Ana Maria can be one of those people that from one moment to the next channels beautifully. And for me, it's been 3 years plus, 4 years plus. And even though I was getting better at it, I got to a point where I felt like I couldn't channel anymore.
Mm.
And now I'm in this lull where I try to connect, quote unquote, try, and I don't feel the same connection that I had before. And so again, through my friends, I have received messages and guidance, which is telling me that I am learning something new, and that I am now, I kind of got to a point within my old style, and now I'm thrown into a different pool that has different connections, that have different associations, that has a different process altogether. And now I'm back at square one, learning, okay, how do I play with this energy? How do I find a rhythm within a chaotic structure of energy? When I try and connect right now, it feels like waves going in all kinds of directions with, you know, wind blowing and, you know, tides shifting, and there's no beautiful rhythm of waves crashing. It's just everywhere. How do I connect to anything? And so my journey now is also, my channeling now isn't a free flow of language. My channeling is, oh, they're telling me, Ana Maria, that it's going to be really important for you to go out and play with one of your trees after this conversation. I connect and I feel an energy and I get a 4-word sentence and then it stops. It's there's no free flow. And I'm like, no, 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 I want the free flow.
It reminds me so much of video games, right? Like we get the first level down, right? We're blowing, breezing through it. We know which way to go. We know how to avoid that pitfall. And then all of a sudden we up level and we're in the next level. We're in the next screen, right? And all of a sudden what worked before doesn't work, right? And also what you're explaining is very consistent with the path of a master teacher, because we have to learn it, right? You only have to be one chapter ahead of your class, but you still have to know it enough to explain it. And what we've all learned is if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then you don't really understand it. And that's what I love about this whole process. And again, nothing on our journey is wasted, especially someone like you that has got a platform where you're sharing with others and showing them the reality of what a spiritual path might look like. It's not just, rainbows, unicorns, some meditation, and then ascension. That we have a kind of a convoluted idea of that whole process. And it is definitely more of what you have been describing.
One of the things that you guys will learn, for those of you that are new to my conversations, is a big part of my intention is to provide guidance, to provide a perspective and a point of view that will help you on your own journey. And so as much as I love the conversations with Ana Maria and others that I'm going to invite to these conversations, everything is going to be based on what can we talk about and how can we talk about it in a way that will awaken something in you. Because what we say doesn't matter. How we say it doesn't matter. Yes, we can talk about concepts that might be new for you or might appear to be new for you. But what I say and how I say it isn't where the power is. The power is in what you hear and what insight comes to you as a result of being exposed to information. And so the emphasis is on you, not on me and not on Ana Maria. And so you'll notice that I've talked about certain concepts that are kind of key to our fundamental understanding of our spiritual journey. This is the first conversation in the Spirit with Love podcast. And so what am I doing? I'm allowing my mind to settle, to feel for what's next. Because that conversation came to a natural end.
And I'm actually getting a lot about a couple different things, right? This piece, it's almost like you're giving folks a look behind the curtain, right? Because when somebody goes out and they're doing their channeling or they're doing their animal communication or whatever their thing is, right? It's very polished, it's very presentable, but you don't necessarily know what went on behind the scenes for them to get there, right? Like you've really beautifully articulated your own journey with channeling. And, again, if you'd been dropped in that second level at the beginning, there's a good chance you would have been like, well, this clearly isn't for me, right? I'm out of here. But because you had the experience of the free flow of information coming through and it opened up a possibility for you, it enticed you, right? It's like divine seduction enough to keep you like, okay. But that piece, right? We often think about I'm just going to call it intuitive development as linear or like a switch, right? It's either on or it's off, and we're either here or we're here. But that's not very accurate. It's actually quite cyclical, and it goes in these different cycles, these different rhythms. And one of them will feel like radio silence, right? Like, oh shit, I broke it. I used to be able to do it. Now I can't do it. I broke it. And that's not the truth. The truth is we are in an up level. And so the way we were sensing, the way we were perceiving before, we're being asked to open up to a new way that we don't know what it is, right? Or we would simply do it. But that's what I say, that radio silence piece is almost like being in a dark hallway. and you're like trying to find the door, find the door, find the door. And then when you find the door, right, the light that rushes in is huge. And even for myself, when I first started doing animal communication sessions, it wasn't like how it is for me now, right? Someone asks a question, it's like magic 8 ball, it shakes up my brain and information comes in. What it was at first is I had to be almost very Edgar Casey like. I had to be in a meditative trance, ask the question while I was in there, and then try and stay enough between.
She just froze. And I'm not sure if I froze or she froze, but I'm going to keep on talking because fundamentally my recording is going to be on my conversation. So
Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm not
yeah,
showing.
yeah,
Okay,
you're
good.
back. You're back.
So where now mine says my internet is unstable.
You're okay right now.
Okay.
Okay, so give me a second. One of the things that we do when we play with energy, many people talk about how when we play with energy, that energy can interfere with our technology. And so when these things happen, one of the things that I do, whether or not it helps, who knows, but one of the things that I do is I send out an invitation to our respective spirit teams for them to create a pathway of energy so that it doesn't interfere with our technology. And whether, again, that helps or doesn't, who knows, but it's one of the things that I do. And I know that you kind of got cut off, but I want to emphasize something that you talked about. And I'm so honored that you picked up on this. For me, a big part of what I do is to show the behind the scenes, to talk about the behind the scenes. How does it work? I feel that the more we understand how something works, the more equipped we are to utilize whatever technologies we're playing with more efficiently, more effectively, more powerfully. And so that's a big part of the conversation. There's a, speaking of trees, there's an energy that I am feeling that wants to share something. Would you be in a position to pick up on that and share that with us? And it may not be a tree, but
Absolutely. Let me feel in and see what is coming through. What I'm getting is a tree. It's a coastal tree, and the name is like right outside of my grasp right now. But this tree's name is Lou, but that doesn't tell us the species. But it's a coastal tree, and they're showing me the ones with the big roots that go down, and they hold in the shore. All of the nature people are screaming it right now through the broadcast. But what they're saying is, right, like just like that, they put the roots down to help stabilize against the different waves that come in. But there's another thing that's happening with those trees, and it's the mangroves. Thank you, team. The mangrove trees. And in the center, their taproot, because they are essentially on the coast, they're in salt water, right? Which is not suitable to thriving and growing, but they have a taproot that goes down deep enough, connects to source water for them that allows them to thrive. And it is this filtering out of the salt water that allows them to thrive and allows them to hold the soil, the land up again, so we don't lose that coastline over and over again. And for us, as humans on this path, right, there are waves crashing around us all the time. And it is salt water, right? It's not a nourishing water like that. We think about water as life. And we have to be equipped to filter that out. And exactly what you were just saying, that process you were explaining, about the energies. I mean, it's funny because each thing that you've been explaining is kind of a fractal of another thing and another thing, which we know is actually the nature of reality. But this is it, whether we're talking about channeling, whether we're talking about dealing with technology, right? It's about filtering out that stuff that's not assisting us. I will do a similar thing on my own broadcasts when we're finding we're having technical things. I'll have people drop into the heart space and breathe because the breath is that connection that we forget about. And when we can focus our attention and our intention, we are able to stabilize, right? Just like that mangrove, we are able to stabilize the ground underneath us, even though it's not in a place that would be friendly for us to expand and grow.
You know, I get this image of the root structure of mangroves, which are broad and they're thin. They're not thick, heavy roots. They're thin and they're expansive to allow for the flow of water so that they don't get knocked over. That's the image that I get from the mangrove, is that thin lattice work of roots that is raised up above. There are so many different directions that we can go in for spiritual growth and spiritual expansion, and there's no right path. You know, we started the conversation with Ana Maria speaking about what you resonate to. And so this conversation may not be for everybody. A spiritual journey, spiritual expansion isn't a better journey, isn't a better expansion. It's different. And it feels like it's a better choice for me because, again, that's my preference and my direction. So it feels like it's a better preference for me. A friend of mine was in my membership community for a while, and as soon as I started introducing the idea of channeling, dropped out because he just doesn't connect to it, relate to it, doesn't want to be around it. And I'm exaggerating to kind of prove the point. And so he dropped out of the conversation because the whole idea of channeling just didn't resonate with him. And that's a better choice for him. And so channeling isn't better for him. We are all in this path where we are learning what it means to be connected to our true essence and to live life with that remembrance, as opposed to living life with a perception that we are not. And we are in this bridge between a three-dimensional world and a five-dimensional reality. And we are the bridge between the two. I was talking with a friend of mine about how it is so incredible to think about the fact that I am alive at a time when I can play with both actively and I can interact with both experiences fully from one moment to the next. And now we're all evolving into, we're told, we're told that we're evolving into an experience of humanity that is going to transcend our understanding of where we are. And we're going towards a perspective where we're going to create our experience of life, remembering that we are source energy. And what can we create when we realize that we have the power to create worlds within us and universes and dimensions? That power is our divine gift. What can I not create knowing that I have that available to me? And that is what we are stepping into. That is one of the descriptions that I use for what we're stepping into. We're stepping into a world that's going to be filled with love and compassion and understanding as a default setting, which again is our default setting. And so what we're doing is about a remembering that that is who we already are. And like anything else on this planet, there's an evolution. There's a transitional period. And we are the soldiers on the field, so to speak. I'm not a big fan of using war metaphors, but this is just what came. We are the ones that are on the ground, and we are the ones that implement things. We are not the only animals on this planet that implement changes. In fact, we are not the most important animals on this planet that implement changes, but we are one of the more important ones. And so we are the ones that need to bring in a change so that Earth can evolve into what we are collectively evolving into. Our awareness of this helps. Having said all this, what's really important to remember is that I am not here to heal the Earth. I am not here to heal Ana Maria Vasquez and her journey. I am here to heal myself. And as I heal myself, the Earth heals. And as I heal myself, I tap into aspects of who I am that start to shine brighter. And when Ana Maria comes into my perspective, into my awareness, into my experience, who I am and where I'm coming from helps to awaken something in her to shift her into her healing easier and with more grace. But I cannot do my purpose if she is my reason, because then that is playing outside of how things work. That is innocently bringing in a misunderstanding of how things work, which again will innocently create limitations to the effectiveness of that. And so the more I'm able to go within my own journey and to awaken to the truth of who I am, the more quote unquote effective I am at impacting Ana Maria and her journey. But it's about me and my journey. That is what causes the change. That is what creates the space for healing.
And it creates an invitation for someone else to join you, right? Through your example, not because you preached at them long enough and they finally gave in, but because they saw a real transformation in you and around you that then sparks a curiosity in them. You're right. We get very distracted once we get on the path about what everybody else is doing. And it really is such wasted energy. We could turn that within and do a deeper dive, but right, it's way easier to point out there.
One of the things with mangroves, so again, I'm tapping into what is present.
This is energetic ping pong.
Yes. So I'm quieting my mind to just feel into what next. And again, the mangroves come up. And so then I think, okay, what about the mangroves? And I'm playing with the idea of what wants to be said. Or I can personalize it and say, what do I want to say about mangroves? And so many of us will talk about how, oh, my spirit team just gave me a message, or I just, thank you guides, as Ana Maria said with the word mangroves. Thank you, team, for mangroves. Bollocks. It didn't have to be her team. It was her. It
It's
could
the
have been.
field. It's in the field already. It was whether I accessed it or not. It's just there.
And so many of us in this conversation will give credit to our spirit team for the things that they're doing with us and helping us. And again, I'm not saying that that's not accurate. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because many of us just experience our own thoughts. And we believe that our own thoughts are separate from the world out there. And it's not true. As I am settling in my mind and I'm playing with, okay, where do I want to go next? And the image of the mangrove comes up and I'm like, okay, what do I want to say about the mangrove? If my perspective is that I am the one that's creating the thinking around it, I am going to use that language. Now, notice that I didn't use that language. The language I used was what wants to be said about the mangrove. And so my language is a different perspective. But again, I want to make sure that we're inclusive of our own intelligence as well, right? Now, again, as I start in the beginning, there's no separation between the two.
That's where it gets tricky.
Right?
It's a whole nother level of discernment in here.
There's no separation between the two. And so what wants to be said about the mangrove, what came to me is that the mangrove is playing with multiple elements at once. It's one of the few that has the capacity to interact with multiple elements in an incredibly powerful way. We talk about breath. We talk about the power of water. We talk about the power of earth. There are 7 elements, according to some. For me, there are 3 primary elements: earth, water, and air. And the mangrove is one that plays with all 3. In fact, thrives because of all 3. Now, one can say that all beings thrive because of all 3, but you get what I'm saying. The way that the mangrove interacts with the elements in the way that it does is so specialized. It's a master. The mangrove is a master of the elements in which it's in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a reminder that we are too. We are the masters of the elements that we are playing within. Whatever decision you make for which direction you go in, I can guarantee that you're going in that direction because that's your mastery.
Mm-hmm.
The council and Sarah Landon the other day talked about how your desires are placed within you from your soul to help you recognize who you are and what you are here to do, quote unquote. Now, this is my language. This is no longer their language. There are so many different directions that we can go in this conversation.
I just want to underscore something from the mangrove.
Yeah.
Again, it's fascinating of all the trees that could have come in, right? That it was mangrove. And you alluded to this earlier, where when we think about the mangrove tree, we're drawn to the roots, right? Where there's other trees, we're drawn to different parts of them, but we're definitely drawn to the roots. And this is exactly what our whole conversation has been about: the inner world. On a tree, the roots symbolize that inner world, right? Our connection, because they're in the ground, they're grounding, but there's this communication network and nutrition network that's under there that's sourcing it. And so I really can't think of a better tree to, be our totem for this conversation, where everything we keep talking about comes back to that inner world, right? And we want to be present to that, right? Even if the inner world is just saying, why aren't we there yet? Just to be cognizant of that is very important. And again, when we get on our path, we get very distracted, of course, right? And we focus on what everyone else is doing, what everyone else is saying, and we forget, right? Like, what's our inner language? What's going on in the internal broadcasting that's happening? And is that our truth? And we want to calibrate more and more to what our truth, capital T, is, because energy follows thought, and we're putting out a broadcast. And is that really what you want to be creating? And I say this a lot, we will talk to ourselves in ways that we wouldn't talk to somebody else, right? And so we want to go within and we want to pay attention to that. We want to do that internal audit and be mindful and notice and watch and observe and make adjustments where we see that it's needed, not out of a judgment against ourselves or a wrongness, but realizing, oh my gosh, those thoughts are not of a vibration of love. And that's not helping on this journey of what I'm looking to create.
You're talking about the mangrove and the root structure, and the tree of life as a metaphor always shows the root structure. And the mangrove is one of the few trees that reveals outside, above the ground, its root structure. Now, it's not all of its roots, obviously, because there's roots that go deeper below into the ground. But from a visual perspective, the mangrove is a visual representation of how we perceive the tree of life to be, which is above as so is below, revealed and exposed. You talked about how thought creates form, and you used different language for that. And again, I just want to bring this up. My perspective, again, about innocence and integration, it's not about controlling your thoughts. It's not about policing your thoughts, because, oh my gosh, been there, done that, takes a lot of energy, and it's not a lot of fun. For years, not a lot of fun. And so one of the things that I've learned over time is that it's about it's about being aware of, being the observer. Oh, look, that's a thought that isn't very helpful. Okay. Well, let me just let that energy pass through, and let me invite another thought to come in that resonates more with the direction that I want to go in. And so I'm not trying to control the bad thoughts, and I'm not trying to not pay attention to the bad thoughts. I'm just allowing the bad thoughts to just flow, because energy flows. Our thoughts flow. And so I allow that energy to flow, and I am eyes open looking for what feels better. Oh, look, that's a thought that feels a little bit better. Great, let me play there. Let me hold on to that, because that's going to help me feel a little bit better. And then I feel into that space, and then I, again, let it go. And then I look for a thought that felt a little bit better than that one. And so they can be incremental movements. They can also be, oh my gosh, that thought, if I focus on that thought, that will jump me into the stratosphere instantly. That's possible too. However, more often than not, especially when we're not feeling great, it's really hard for us to jump into the stratosphere instantly. And so it's about just noticing what thought feels a little bit better than where I am right now,
Yep.
and not judging myself for feeling like crap, for having unhelpful thoughts, because thoughts always have different levels. At any point in time, you're going to have slightly better feeling thoughts and slightly worse feeling thoughts. And then what thought you choose to pay attention to play with, because it is a game, believe it or not, the thoughts that you choose to play with are the ones that are going to then help to shape your experience in that moment. And some would say, more accurately, the thoughts that you pay attention to and you give importance to and meaning are the ones that create your experience.
Mm.
But the word create is really hard for our human because create introduces a lot of judgment and defensiveness. And so I like to soften that by saying that the thoughts that we pay attention to and we give meaning and importance to and focus are the ones that help to shape our experience. A lot of what we're talking about is again, I go back to understanding how something works and being compassionate with yourself along the way. Gosh, that's a hard one for me. That's been a really hard one for me. That's still a challenge at times. And so I want to introduce an idea that a friend of mine shared. Denai Novoa is a friend of mine who channels, and at some point I'll invite her to be on this podcast if she accepts, which I'm sure she will at some point. But I was in a conversation with her channel talking about money, as a matter of fact. And money is a very charged subject for many of us. And one of the things that I had already learned through a different experience was that it doesn't matter what you say, it's what you finish with that matters. And so if I go into a moment where I feel into the lack and limitation of my experience, and we all know that feeling into our lack and limitation does not feel good. That is not a feel-good state. And it's not a feel-good state because it's opposed to the truth of who we are, which is why it doesn't feel good.
Yep.
But that aside, when I go into my moments of lack and limitation, one of the things that I do is I start to take some breaths, connect back into the present moment, connect into the truth of who I am as best as I can in that moment. And that helps to shift the energy of that thought, that perspective in the moment. I connect with a more expansive purpose. I connect with a more expansive journey that is outside of my human awareness, that my human doesn't understand and cannot understand because it extends beyond what our human is capable of. And I say that with love and appreciation. And I connect to that essence of who I am. And I shift the end of the sentence. And so where I put the period of the sentence is what makes the biggest impact on my quote unquote manifestation, my law of attraction. And so many of us have been told, you can't think negatively, you can't think bad thoughts, you can't sit in a bad thought. And there's a lot of truth in that. But it's less about that and more about where are you putting the period? Where are you putting the full stop? Where are you choosing to end that sentence? And where you choose to end the sentence has much more impact on the vibration that you are releasing to the universe than the beginning of the sentence.
Yeah, and that piece about control and monitoring, right? Like that, like you said, it's a full-time job, and it is there's no forward momentum in that. And those things come up, they don't just come up to trip you up or to be evidence against you. They come up because to open you up to a new possibility, right? If we're not aware of, if we're not paying attention to that internal broadcast that's going on, right? We just assume everything is the truth that's in there, and that couldn't be further from the truth. But those lower, let's just call them lower vibrational thoughts that come up that we could get stuck in, and we do get stuck in because we're humans, right? It happens. What the more you work with the concept, the more you are with it, you do change your relationship with it. And I always talk about it like when we bring a new animal into our home, like a little puppy, right? If we just let it do whatever it wants, what's it going to do? It's going to chew up my shoes. It's going to pee on my floor, right? Like, well, when we live in this pack, we don't do it that way. So we train them, we work lovingly with them to teach them how we do things. It's not about, this dog is a bad dog, right? It's about training it. And then it's the same thing with our mind. Those things come up, and we don't want to just put a lid on that. We want to notice it, right? We want to notice, oh, this is the thought that came up. This is the emotion that's attached to it, because emotions are energy in motion. It's really a treasure map for us. So what's up? This is the thought. This is the emotion. And okay, I see where that came from, but that's not my truth. That's not my truth. That's not what I'm moving towards. What I'm moving towards is connection, unity, love, peace, harmony, what abundance, prosperity, whatever it is, right? Because who knows what that one thought was that popped up that took so much of the bandwidth. But it's again back to how you even started. It's not about making any thought aspect wrong. It's about having some compassion on it, right? Like I understand why a wounded aspect of me would think that. There is a logic to that. It's not all illogical. And at the same time, it's also not useful for the way that I'm navigating, where I'm navigating to. And so let me look at that, because there may be something that's up for healing that will make my navigation a little bit easier. So we pay attention and we notice, just like we notice, as we've sat here, the weather has done multiple different things as I've been looking out the window. And it's the same thing. Those clouds, they come and they go, and they hide things and they reveal things. And that's exactly what's happening in our human mind.
One of my spirit friends who channeled through a friend of mine introduced the idea of contrast being like buying a dress. And I thought it was a really easy and simple metaphor to play with. When you know what you want and you're very clear about what you want, you can walk into a store, find it, and walk out very easily. When you don't know what you're looking for, you go in and you shop around and you look around and you touch the textures and you look at the different cuts and you try on different things and you're like, nope, this isn't for me. Nope, this isn't for me. In order to help you figure out what it is exactly that you're looking for.
But you're not making those dresses wrong. The ones that you didn't pick.
And so this contrast, one of the ways in which contrast exists is to help us identify what it is that we want when we are not clear about what we want. And so when we are more clear of what we want, there's less need for contrast. And I thought that was a really beautiful way of creating innocence and understanding of contrast. Because again, contrast is one of these words that a lot of people vilify. So I'm aware of the time, and there's a couple things that I want to say about Spirit with Love before I turn it over to Ana Maria. There's a free masterclass series. Oh, that's confusing. there's a free mini course that I've created on spiritual foundation, available to anybody and everybody. It's 6 sessions where I talk about everything that comes to mind for me to talk about as a subject to help us deepen and strengthen the foundation from which we are coming from on this spiritual journey. There's also going to be, at this point, they are not yet created, but hopefully by the time you see this, there'll be some on the webpage. There's also going to be a series of free masterclasses that I host with people like Ana Maria, where we have a conversation about a subject. Now, Ana Maria has agreed to create a free masterclass for us, and she and I need to play with timing of that. As a continuation of the free masterclass, we are also going to create a paid-for course for people that want to go deeper into the subject. And if you're interested in learning and being up to date with all of the latest news of Spirit with Love, you can register on the website spiritwithlove.com. And you can either register to just Spirit with Love, or you can register to my list, which includes Spirit with Love and everything else that I do. So if you're interested in continuing to play with me and with us, thank you for being here. It's really cool to have you here playing with us. And so Ana Maria is one of these people that I feel is part of my foundation. And I am honored that she agrees to come back to play with me and have these conversations. And so if you've enjoyed the conversation with her, I can guarantee that she will be back at some point. And I would like to kind of turn it over to you for 2 things. And I'm trying to think of, do I want to have some kind of question to ask all of the speakers? And I don't really feel that that's appropriate. So I'm not going to play in that space, at least not for now. It might come later. But I would love for you to share anything else that feels present for you in the moment. Have it be a continuation of what we've said or something new. And then go into how can people contact you if they want to continue playing in your space.
Well, first of all, thank you for your deep listening and creating this space in the first place, right? We need more spaces to have these soulful conversations and to play in the energy, right? Like that is always one of the biggest draws for me is we don't this when I work with you, it's very different than a lot of other appearances that I make that are very scripted for various reasons, right? And so I appreciate the free flow that's here and the trust of exactly what needs to come through is going to come through. And so for me personally, on my own path of expansion, the animals and nature have been my biggest guides, my biggest teachers, the ones who have provided the containers for me to dive deeper. And so as I then teach what I've learned, what I have learned is that I'm not for everyone, right? Everyone who wants to learn how to talk to their animals, I'm not necessarily the teacher for that. But for those people who want to learn how to connect with the natural world, be it animals, plants, trees, the elements, whatever that is, and they know that this is part of their spiritual path, right? They understand that it's not about, owning a dog, but being on a journey with this dog who is teaching you things. You're teaching them how to sit and not pee in your living room, but they're teaching you bigger things about who you truly be. And those are the folks that I see really have the biggest expansions, the biggest growth, the biggest stepping out into the world and sharing their abilities. So again, back to resonance. If what I'm talking about, the way we're talking about it resonates with you, then absolutely, right? Check me out, intentiontraining.com. That's my website. That's where you're going to find how to join my mailing list, to stay in touch with what I'm doing, what I'm up to, what I'm talking about. It's also the place where you can find different courses, whether you're interested in learning to connect with rocks or trees or animals, or you want to dive in and you want to open those intuitive abilities. And I love helping people unpack their intuitive backpacks. It's so fun, right? When we've got a backpack on, we can't always get everything, that granola bar that has now fallen to the bottom, right? If we've got a hiker buddy with us who can reach in and say, here's your granola bar, here's your water, and here's the map, where are we going? It's very helpful. So again, I always say, follow what lights you up. If this conversation, if the possibilities that we've laid out here, right, then move forward, whether that's deeper into connection of this community that invited me here, whether that's going deeper with me personally or some combination of both. Listen to those nudges, follow, lean in to what lights you up.
So Ana Maria, thank you again for coming to play. Always an honor. Always a lot of fun. And so I'm going to leave us with my closing conclusion. And again, I'm saying this again because it's the first episode of the project. And I'm not always going to be doing this on every episode. And I'm creating the intention that the opening intention and this closing conclusion is the energy is expansive to the entire project itself. And again, I have a very fluid utilization of energy. I play a lot in the space of, well, if I'm God, I can do everything. And so why can't I set an intention in episode 1 that follows every single episode without having to say it again and again and again and again? How is it that I can create a space within my home, connecting with the energy of the home, to create an energy field that filters out anything that is unwanted, unuseful, or unnecessary, allowing things that are in without having to fortify it every single day of my life? How can I create an energy field within my body that balances my chakras without having to have a practice of balancing my chakras every single day of my life? And so I'm a big fan of creating these frameworks where I'm setting the intention that is longevity, it's long lasting, it's continuous. And when I'm inspired to do a chakra healing, I do a chakra healing. When I'm inspired to connect with my home, I connect with my home. But I don't need to do it every single day. Just like this closing conclusion, I may be inspired at some point in some conversation, in some future event, to do this closing conclusion. So anyway, just an invitation for you to play with the creator that you are within your own creation. And thank you again for being here. So I'd like to thank all of the beings here that are with us, especially to all the beings that helped bring us together and that took part in co-creating this incredible experience with us. May the love and connection we have with our true self and our spirit team continue to get stronger. May our path be illuminated and our journey blessed. And may we all continue to deepen, explore, and expand even more into the truth of who we are. I am who I am. I am that I am. I always am. And I'm going to leave you for now with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love. And we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. We hope that you've enjoyed this conversation and that it's allowed you to go deeper, explore and expand even more into the truth of who you are. We invite you to visit our website, spiritwithlove.com, for free masterclasses and much more, and remind you to like, subscribe, and share this with others. Until next time, allow yourself to feel and reflect on what it means to truly be spirit with love.